Welcome to Getting Our Reward Heads Together. Reward Heads is a boutique consultancy creating bespoke solutions for our clients, but we'll tell you more about that after the episode. For now, let's get started. I'm Christina and I'm joined by John. We're both consulting managers at Reward Heads, and today we're talking about something every organisation does, but not always very well, and that's communicating reward.
And specifically how to communicate reward, especially pay, to a diverse UK workforce effectively. Because it's not just what you offer, it's whether employees actually understand it. So let's start with the big statistic. Only about 58% of employees understand their organisation's reward strategy. So
Wow.
nearly half of your workforce may not really understand what's being invested in them.
Yeah, and that's where communication becomes a real strategic lever. So, done well, it can build trust because people can see that pay and benefits are fair and transparent and that you're not hiding anything. It can increase engagement by helping people understand the real value of what they get, not just their salary. And good and timely communications can reduce rumours and misinterpretation by taking away the guesswork around how reward decisions are made. And finally, it can support retention because when people truly understand and appreciate their reward, they're more likely to stay. But if people don't understand their reward, they won't value it. And that's a missed opportunity. So if you're spending money on something that's not valued, it means it doesn't have any impact or influence for that individual, which isn't ideal, especially when budgets are tight.
And reward communication is hard because reward itself is complex.
Exactly. Reward is both broad and deep. Pay, benefits, pensions, incentives. And to make it harder, some of these, and pay in particular, can be an emotive subject.
You're also dealing with very different audiences, which you probably communicate with in different ways. So you've got frontline employees, your head office staff, and then senior managers. There are probably different levels of understanding and interest between them. Additionally, everyone interprets reward through their own lens of what matters to them, what they earn, what others earn, and what they think is fair, and their past experience and expectations, be it good or bad.
Yeah, and we often see a split in where organisations struggle. So, for frontline employees, it's things like getting to larger populations, which can be geographically dispersed, harder to reach communication channels. So, having an offline workforce where people won't have everyday access to a computer as part of their job, perhaps groups where you're reliant on others to communicate the messages, so your area managers, for example. And although we think that having one rate of pay is the easier option, there can be confusion around the living wage differences and why your organisation has opted to pay one rather than the other. And then where there are spot rates or spot salaries, how people can be rewarded for their efforts when everybody's on the same rate of pay. Whereas for head office roles, it's more about perceived fairness because salary decisions are more often about the individual, which can make frameworks and the processes that sit behind them more complex. And how do you explain smaller increases? Because in many organisations, the lion's share of the budget goes towards mandatory living wage increases, which can feel unfair to those people. And senior managers are in lots of ways similar to other head office roles, but they will often have specific reward elements that only apply to them, like LTIPs, for example, which become slightly more complex to explain. And of course, for this group, they'll hopefully want to understand the reward of all those people that work for them. So, something we want to encourage and which we'll talk about later. And across all of those groups, there's a shared challenge getting people to appreciate the total reward, not just base pay. So, John, what have you seen work well in organisations where there's been that split of different employee groups?
Communication of reward can't just be about reward. It can't just be a reward task. You need the whole organization's support. But also think about what is going on for your employees. In retail, their desk, if you like, is a shop floor, it's a warehouse, it's the back of a delivery van. You aren't just sending a message, you're battling for 5 minutes of someone's attention between serving a customer and a delivery lorry turning up in the loading bay. The first stumbling block is quite often the language of reward. Head office loves a bit of corporate speak, things like total reward statements, share schemes, and variable bonus thresholds. But if I'm a part time sales assistant on a frantic Saturday afternoon, well, that just sounds like noise. It means nothing to me. You have to make any communication relevant to the person receiving it.
Yeah, I see it all the time. So we design these brilliant benefits package that look great on paper, but we fail the so what test. So if a colleague doesn't understand how a scheme actually affects them or their take home pay, the communication has failed. And I think you're right. In reward, we have a lot of technical language, which makes explaining how things work quite challenging. So things like job evaluation or market median don't mean very much to lots of people who aren't dealing with it day to day. So the language that we use needs to be as simple as possible. And with that, we also need to remember that for many employees, English may not be their first language. So complex wording and jargon may not be fully understood.
Absolutely. The key thing here is that you really need to use your local management. They are going to be the ones that understand the audience and who can make sure that the messages land well and are understood. We also need to be careful that they don't, however, become a filter, only passing on the messaging that they feel is relevant. Remember, we said earlier how everyone interprets reward through their own lens. And with that, we have to be conscious that communicating reward is not often listed as part of their day job. It's an additional ask that they have to plan in around other non negotiables like opening up the shop or setting up the till. And it isn't just about reading out a message. We really want the manager to understand what they're saying and be able to own the message, which all takes time and a degree of confidence. If they don't understand their team's total reward, you can almost guarantee the team member won't be able to either. The other thing that works well is to get the original message as close as you can to your frontline people. Where possible, avoiding this long information cascades that maybe lose a little bit of detail every time they are passed on. Perhaps you have a digital platform or even an app that key messages can be shared directly and quickly through. And be aware of that backroom notice board, which is usually a graveyard of dusty posters from 3 years ago. Make sure your management team are checking for those and removing those out of date materials from those notice boards.
Yeah, I think we've all seen that, haven't we? So I think we can be clear that for frontline communications, if there's one channel that matters most, it's managers. But if they're not confident, the message isn't going to land. So what can we do to set them up for success?
Employees trust their managers more than HR or leadership. Sorry to say that HR are people. But many managers feel uncomfortable talking about reward. So organizations need to support them. So make sure you give them clear talking points or possibly even a script. Simple tools which they can go through with their teams. Give them training and frequently asked question documents that they can use to hopefully answer a lot of the questions quickly and rapidly for the person who's asking them. And some of your managers may be new in post. They may need some confidence building, perhaps even practicing giving the update in a role play scenario.
Yeah. Okay, so let's simplify this then. What does good reward communication actually look like? I think there are four key principles. First, transparency. So be clear, be honest, no hidden surprises.
Absolutely. Second, consistency. The message should be the same across HR, managers, and systems.
And third, personalization. Generic messages don't land. People want to know what it means for them.
Absolutely. And fourth, timeliness. Not just once a year, this should be continuous. But that doesn't mean you should try and launch a new reward scheme on top of your peak Christmas trading period.
Now, I don't think anybody would thank you for that.
No.
um, but it's also worth considering a multi-channel approach. So email, for example, alone won't work. So it's worth thinking about manager conversations, digital tools, maybe group sessions, and always tailor the channel to the audience where you can. Although I appreciate we are making that sound easier than it is.
We are, and we know it's a challenge. A good one to bear in mind because we know most organizations still rely on primary or written communications is the wording you choose really matters. Small phrasing differences can completely change how something is interpreted, and you have to consider the tone. Something I've found that can help is to run any draft communications past someone who hasn't been involved in the detail. If you've got a friendly, not a reward person, it's always good to have a read through it first.
Yeah, great idea. And as much as I think we see the benefits in digital communications, it isn't always a silver bullet. So we've seen firms launch apps, but then you hit the personal phone barrier where employees start to question whether they really want work stuff on their own mobile on a day off. And you might have heard the term app fatigue, where you've got multiple apps, each sending you various notifications through the day, and you just end up swiping them because you haven't got time to look at them. And then realistically, you don't really go back to check them later on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, why do you think we find communicating rewards such a challenge?
I think it's a number of reasons. So traditionally, we've shied away from talking about reward, except with the individual that it concerns. But I think that's changing, especially in light of the EU Pay Transparency Directive, but also just generationally. So our younger workforces just don't think in that way. They're more than comfortable talking about their pay with friends and colleagues. It's also an emotive subject. So as employers, we're worried about employees not agreeing with decisions and challenging them. And when you're trying to balance equity across a whole organisation versus doing the right thing for an individual, it can be quite challenging. And actually, what we're seeing from a lot of our clients is that they just aren't confident in their pay structures.
Gotcha. And right now, organisations are perhaps looking at increased reward communications because of that EU Pay Transparency Directive. So they're looking at sharing salary ranges on job adverts, explaining pay decisions and how they're made, and being generally more open overall. That could be quite a shift for some.
Yeah, and many just aren't ready. So if you are starting that journey, it's about getting the basics right. So defining your pay policy and principles, building a consistent job evaluation framework, benchmarking your roles and using that to create salary ranges, and having a robust process for setting pay and progressing people through that range.
Yes. And crucially, add context. Show people what it means for them, how they can grow and progress, and then communicate and keep reviewing. So, if we can leave you with one thought, it's that reward communication isn't just a nice to have, it's essential.
Yeah, because if people don't understand their reward, they won't value it and they will lack the context to be able to make sensible comparisons.
Spot on. And at the end of the day, people stay in a job because they feel valued. If they don't even know what rewards are on the table, you're missing a trick, both for the organisation and the staff.
Thanks, John. And thanks for listening to Getting Our Reward Heads Together, brought to you by Reward Heads. We're a boutique reward consultancy working with organisations across the UK and beyond to help HR and reward leaders design fair, engaging, and effective reward frameworks and solutions, from pay and benefits to recognition and governance. Every solution we create is bespoke, built around each client's unique goals and challenges. We also offer coaching, resourcing, and trusted forums to keep you connected to the latest reward trends. If we can support your reward journey, we'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe to hear future forums and do reach out on reward solutions at rewardheads.co.uk.
Thanks for listening to Getting Our Reward Heads Together, brought to you by Reward Heads. We're a boutique reward consultancy working with organisations across the UK and beyond. Our mission is to help HR and reward leaders design fair, engaging and effective reward frameworks and solutions, from pay and benefits to recognition and governance. Every solution we create is bespoke, built around each client's unique goals and challenges. We also offer coaching, resourcing and trusted forums to keep you connected to the latest reward trends. If we can support your reward journey, we'd love to hear from you.